Imposter syndrome is a thing. It is a pernicious psychological phenomenon. When you have imposter syndrome, you feel inadequate, like a fraud, undeserving of your position, like you don't belong in a job or a role that you really are already in. Imposter syndrome manifests itself in incessant worry that you'll be found out, that someone will suddenly realize that you are not as intelligent, qualified, or even as cool as they think you are. This project is not about researching imposter syndrome or even about telling you how to cure your own imposter syndrome. This project is real life testimonials. People from all over the world with different backgrounds and occupations, all who've experienced this same phenomenon. This project is not about solving the problem of imposter syndrome. It's about bringing to you an awareness that you're not alone. It's about showing all of us that there is hope to cope. Just to warn you, fangirling is about to commence. Evo Terra is a podcaster, but more than that, he literally published the 40th podcast ever. Evo is an incredibly talented writer. He's a published author. The first book he wrote was called The Beer Diet. The second book he co-authored was Podcasting for Dummies, and there are a few more in there as well. You can see Amazon for the full run. He's traveled the world and lived for a while in Thailand. He has so many Google results, I couldn't even begin to count them. I stopped on page 12. Mostly, he's just a really cool dude, and I am super stoked that he said yes to sharing his story. Hi, Evo. How are you today?
Hey, Betty. I'm doing fantastic.
That's good.
No adverse reactions from second vaccine. Woohoo!
Hot diggity. All right. So Evo, just in case there's one person out there that has no idea who you are, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure thing. So my name is Evo Terra. I am a podcast strategist. I have been working in the podcasting space since 2004. Goodness gracious. That is a very, very long time. Back in 2016, I started my business, which helps businesses produce podcasts. That's what we do. But I think I'm most well known for in the podcasting space, at least most recently. Well, previously, I wrote Podcasting for Dummies back in 2005. So yay, that was a lot of fun. But I do a daily podcast called Podcast Pontifications, where I talk about the future of podcasting. And I ask the questions that I think every working podcaster should be asking themselves.
And I do listen to that probably more than I should. I should probably be working instead of watching you record it, but that's fine.
I enjoy seeing you there when I do the live recording too. So wonderful. Thank you for that.
It's fun to watch behind the curtain.
Yeah.
So what would you say are some of your biggest accomplishments in life and in work?
Oh my goodness. Well, biggest accomplishments when it comes to life, making it 52 years. really wasn't sure that was going to happen for the first part. Staying married for a significant portion of those. I think, let's do the math real quickly here, 32 of them.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Which is to the same person. I should mention.
Yeah, that's probably good. That's a good qualifier.
To the same person. Having a child who didn't get arrested or anyone pregnant before the age of 18. So that's always good.
That is an accomplishment. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, great accomplishment. Yeah, and successful and out on his own and not requiring any of our help. So, for me, I think the things I'm successful in life is just being successful enough to be happy, to have the wherewithal to go travel and do crazy things, but also just, be a good person in the world.
Yeah. And what about for work? What are some of your biggest, you mentioned a couple, but kind of like recap us.
Yeah, sure. So in the podcasting space, I was very excited to have the opportunity to write Podcasting for Dummies all the way back in 2005. So that was a big feather in my cap, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then launching a successful, sustainable podcast production company is a good thing. But prior to that, prior to my life in the podcasting space, I've been the vice president of digital advertising agencies that were doing great work for customers here in the country. I was the youngest person. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. I was the third youngest person, let's be very specific, the third youngest person ever promoted to a managerial position for a big company I worked for when I was a kid, just getting started,
Mm-hmm.
and then parlayed that into a career that spans both IT, tech, and marketing, which is kind of where podcasting is today. But if I'm proud of any of those things, it's been able to pivot away to do the next new thing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
someone who doesn't like to sit on one's laurels, and if there's not constant opportunities for me to challenge myself, I'm probably going to be looking for other ways to do that. But I've been really good at doing that in jobs until those jobs no longer let me do that, and then I go get another job,
Yeah.
another company where I can go do something else, or like now, just work for myself.
Yeah. All of that sounds very familiar. Um, so you've also had an opportunity to live other places
Yeah,
besides here. Like right now, I think you're in Phoenix. Not that I'm
I am.
stalking you. I call it research, but whatever, whatever you want to call it. But so where you've lived in other places
I
besides
have.
Phoenix.
Yeah. So, back to the whole raising a kid successfully. So we did that, raised a kid successfully. And since his late teenage years, my wife and I had been saying, we need to go. We need to go do something else, be somewhere else. I don't know where that somewhere else is, but let's just go. And it just so happened in 2014, the way the worlds collided for both of us, we had what I like to call our shared midlife crises together,
Yeah.
where we quit our jobs, or I should say our jobs were winding down. Let's be specific.
Mm.
Let's be real about what happened there. But rather than go find something new and a new place to live, we took it as an opportunity to live and do nothing for a while. We literally sold everything that we owned that didn't fit into 2 suitcases and took off to go travel the world. And in 2015, we hit 13 different countries across 3 different continents. And at the end of that tour, we had a certain amount of money set aside. We didn't want to dip into savings.
Mm-hmm.
We were sitting in Australia right around the Thanksgiving time, looking at the bank account, getting smaller and smaller and
Sure.
smaller, realizing we have to do something. But neither of us wanted to come back to the States. So we booked a flight to Bangkok, Thailand. And before we knew it, my wife was working in the international school system and wound up becoming the principal of a private school in Bangkok, Thailand. So Bangkok was our home base for roughly 3 years, where we did more traveling across Southeast Asia and other places around, just living the life as of expats.
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic experience, I got to tell you.
Yeah. And you did some work while you were there.
Yeah, I did a variety of things. I was still doing some writing work. I tried to get startup consulting, which I was into for a while. I finally launched my podcast consultancy while I was actually living overseas, because I had become the co-host of the Bangkok podcast, a long-running show about expat life in Thailand that had been on hiatus for about 6 years. Randomly, the leftover co-host at the time, Greg Jorgensen, and I were introduced. We didn't even know each of us had an interest in podcasting until we were having beers one night, and he mentioned he used to have a show called the Bangkok Podcast, and I said, I guess my fame hasn't made it all the way to Bangkok, but I know a little bit about the podcasting thing, Greg. And so, boom. So that night we relaunched the show. And I'm happy to say, even now that I've been gone for a few years, it's going strong. A new co-host, Ed Knuth, has taken over my job, and the Bangkok podcast is even better than it was before.
That's awesome. Those are definitely some things to be super proud of. So let me take that last question, what are your biggest accomplishments, and kind of twist it a little bit. What would others say about you? What would they say are your biggest accomplishments?
Well, I suppose it depends on which swath of my life the others come from. I think, like a lot of people who've had a variety of things that they do in their lives, their family says, yeah, I've got no idea what that guy does. No idea.
Yeah.
None of my family could tell you even the closest, and never have. Once I left the retail world I was working in for a while, they lost all ability to talk about what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, if you ask my father, he would tell you that I'm successful because I'm the only child he had that didn't wind up back home.
Okay.
That's a good thing. Yeah. And I think if you started asking some friends of mine that I knew in my younger years, they would be, well, I don't think they'd be surprised that I pivoted out of the job I was doing, because it kind of wasn't for me. I think they would be quite surprised that I was able to find something that worked out so successfully when they were kind of stuck at the job that they were forced to do. And then I think if you met some of my true friends, of which I have a handful of true friends on there, they would probably be proud of the fact that I have continued to do the same thing I did when I was a kid, and that's bounce around from one thing to another nonstop and somehow make a decent living out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So what has been your experience with imposter syndrome?
I'm glad you brought this up because this imposter syndrome is something that I talk about quite a lot because it's something that for the longest time I faced growing up. I faced in my early 20s. Here I was, the youngest person ever. Well, again, third youngest person ever to get promoted to this job. And then I was very good at convincing my bosses at the time that there's another higher level they should promote me to, even if that level didn't actually exist. And so I more often than not, I would get that job. And then I would be constantly amazed that they did it. Like, oh my God, they did what I told them to do. I am so unqualified to do this thing now. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I started encountering the imposter syndrome way back when, back in my mid-20s was when it started becoming a real thing for me. But I was very fortunate. I still read pretty voraciously, but I used to read a lot of nonfiction stuff, and I stumbled across a book that I've already forgotten the name of that talked about the imposter syndrome. And it gave me two things. It said, oh, this is what I have. But the most important thing is that book taught me that everyone feels this. Doctors, someone in the middle of doing open heart surgery for a second will go, is this the right, I don't know. Am I really the right person? So, and it happens at every single level, with the exception of psychopaths, right? Psychopaths don't feel the imposter syndrome. They're pretty much there. But so I was very fortunate that I recognized it early on, was educated about it early on, and I just kind of leaned into it. There's a difference between, in my opinion, recognizing the imposter syndrome and being a fraud. Those are two very, very different things, right?
Agreed.
Because it turns out I'm qualified at all the things that I've done. And even when I've jumped for the rung that I wasn't quite qualified for, look, it wasn't like I was suddenly an airline pilot, right? I mean, I wasn't making a huge leap. Yes, it was just a little bit more than I needed it, but it caused me to reach and go. But it's still something I fight every single day.
Yeah.
Not to the biggest degree. Probably my worst one that I encounter of the imposter syndrome is, so I speak on stage, or I guess I should say I used to speak on stage quite a lot. And even when I'm doing remote interviews, when I've prepared for something, even before I do my show every day that I know that you like to watch and listen to, there's a moment. Sometimes it's a matter of seconds. Sometimes it's longer than that, where I go, this is utter garbage. No one's going to want to hear this. This is dumb. Why am I getting on stage right now? This is going to suck. It's not going to work. It's going to be terrible. And then as soon as I get on stage, or as soon as the camera turns on, it all goes away.
Yeah.
And I just do it. And it works.
Yeah.
Is it the best time every time? Probably not. But do the people in the audience know that it's not my best effort? Never.
No.
It's always, from their opinion, the best.
Yeah. So what does it feel like when you're having sort of one of those episodes of imposter syndrome? What do you...
It's anxiety. And I hadn't really encountered much anxiety in my life. I'm not a person that gets bothered by anxiety. I should say I'm a pretty even-keeled person, until the pandemic. And then, of course, the pandemic has all sorts of anxiety-inducing things that are a lot of fun. And then I realized, like, oh, this feeling now is the same feeling I'm having when the imposter syndrome really strikes me heavily. I don't break out in sweats and chills and whatever, but you just get that tightening, tingling sensation all over that says, and that little nagging voice in my head that says you are unqualified to do the thing you are about to do right now. And it's not a pleasant experience at all.
When was the last time that you experienced it? Like, what was the most recent?
Well, like I said, I probably deal with it every day to a certain degree. I think probably the last time that it was a big deal for me was, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago, I was giving a presentation to a group of liberal arts students at a university. And I'm really good when it comes to preparing for presentations. Right? While I am a procrastinator by trade, I know myself well enough that I don't have an unprepared experience. I just don't do that. So I'll spend hours, if not days, getting together the presentation and making sure it's right. But every time, like I mentioned, this scene comes up. So there I was preparing to go, and I was the second speaker, which I prefer to always be the second speaker if I can, just so I can get a taste of what the crowd is like.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And the first speaker was on stage doing her thing. And as my time came up there, I realized how vastly different the two presentation styles were.
Mm-hmm.
Hers was very academic focused, and I'm not an academic. I'm married to an academic, but I'm not an academic. That's not my style.
Yeah.
Well, you know my style, but my style is much more me just talking and saying the real things that are there. And so for probably half of the 20 minutes she was speaking, it was only a 20-minute talk. For half of the time, I was convinced this is not going to go well. These people are expecting you to be somebody who is credentialed and have at least a master's degree, not just barely a bachelor's from some degree mill. You're going to talk about podcasting to these academics? What? Are you high? So that was it.
Yeah, I think I've had similar conversations. The "Are you high?" has come up a few times, even though I never am. I always kind of wish I was at that moment.
Yeah, that might make it better, but no, I did that once. I decided once when my nerves got so much for me, I actually had like 2 or 3 beers before I went on a presentation and did not do well.
Not a
Although
good
it wasn't
call.
the beer. It was because I didn't really prepare well, was why I was anxious on that one. So it's like, okay, now I don't drink the day before I present.
That's a good call.
No, not even a beer. Nope. For a full 24 hours ahead of time. And I take pilot's rules on that one, like no drinking ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I over prepare.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good plan. And that kind of leads to the next question. So when you have these imposter syndrome episodes, how do you cope with them? Like, are there techniques that you put into practice, certain things that you do to help make it better?
Yeah, the good news is it's become kind of an old friend now. So it's like, oh, here you are. Great. Now I can go on and do my thing, right? So I'm pretty good at ignoring it now, but I didn't always used to be. It was really a hard thing. So the best technique I had, and I occasionally will still employ it, is when it will not shut up.
Yeah.
When it will not go away, the best thing I can do is get up and walk away. And I don't have to do it for a long time, right? I mean, just 2 or 3 minutes, just walking around the room, thinking about something else, anything else, right? Switching tasks, doing something that is menial, that is completely unrelated to whatever that thing is great. My office is in my house and has been since 2016. So that's a lot easier for me than it is for people who actually work in an office and do things. Like when it hits me really hard, I'll go clean the kitchen, put the dishes up, make some tea, just something, just to have a break so that my mind, because I recognize it is nothing but the way my synapses are wired. And so if I get those synapses thinking about something else,
sure,
then they are on another point while I can go back and do the thing. And because for me, this is something that ramps up. It's not a sudden realization. It's a slow build. Well, again, so if I just go away until the thing I have to do it, I don't give it the minutes it takes to build up because I'm just in the middle of doing it at that time.
Sure. That makes sense. What kind of tea, by the way? Everyone will want to know.
We have a wide selection of tea. I'm drinking just a regular mint tea right now, but I'm a big fan of yerba mate.
Oh, okay.
Which comes from Argentina, and huge mate drinker. And so that's nice because it's like a little mellowing out at the same time and giving you the caffeine boost.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. So what would you share with someone who is experiencing imposter syndrome?
Recognize that everyone, literally everyone, has this. You are not alone. Everyone in the boardroom you're about to present to is having it right now. Everyone on stage or in the audience wondering if they're qualified even to be in the same room with people like you. Yeah. It is always this way. It doesn't matter how confident the other person or the other people on the other side feel. Just know they have it too. They may not be experiencing it right now, but they likely are. And the recognition, to me, that was the biggest thing. Just understanding that this is something everybody has to deal with and no one can cure. There is no cure for this. Yeah. Even extremely self-confident people, I put myself in that category. I mean, people have mistakenly called me ego more than one time, and I don't think it's very much on purpose. Even me. I know what I'm doing. I mean, I can walk into most places and know, especially if we're talking about podcasting, for example, I'm the smartest person in this room, but still, every single time, there will be an instance where I go, yeah, no, maybe you're not the guy you think you actually are.
Mhm.
So just recognize it's there
Yeah.
and make it your friend, because you're never going to make it go away.
Yep. Invite it to sit down next to you, because you might as well. It's not going anywhere.
No, it's a part of you. I mean, just deal with it. There it is. It's a flaw. But it's a flaw that everybody else has. No one's perfect, and this is just a part of the human condition.
Yep.
Welcome.
Yes, welcome. Good. All right, last question. Why did you want to be part of this Imposter Syndrome project? What made you want to do that?
Other than you asked me?
Yes, other than because
well, I do like to
could
help
have
out my
said
friends.
no.
I certainly could have. You're right. My default answer tends to be yes on most of these things. I oftentimes will see comments about feeling like a fraud and feeling like they don't really belong, and they don't know what to call it. They don't know what to call it, the imposter syndrome. So I'll see that in online groups and forums and emails and just general conversations. And I just want everyone to know that this is it. There is nothing to be ashamed of or afraid of. Everyone has this thing. So any opportunity to talk about the imposter syndrome and be honest and real and let other people know that even the most successful person you know faces imposter syndrome every single day, that'll help you get through it too. So I want to be a part of a project that helps people recognize that mental health is okay for us to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, we should be not afraid to have these conversations when we're feeling inadequate. Maybe they're warranted. Most likely they're not. And so just being able to be a part of that conversation is important to me.
Yeah. Well, and we're so glad that you did. So appreciate your vulnerability and really appreciate you sharing your story. So thank you, Evo.
Thank you, Betty.
If you like this series and you want to show support, go to buymeacoffee.com/ifyouaskbetty to learn more about how you can support this and future If You Ask Betty projects.